South Africa is registered in America as a private company. Okay?
What?
Yes. It's not a country, it's a business. You can Google now on New York Stock Exchange. South Africa is registered there as a private company, which has directors and shareholders, not the South Africans. And I'm sorry, many South Africans will hear this and be shocked to their boots. But it's a fact. It's a fact, and it can no longer be hidden anymore, that the Reserve Bank is in private hands, the government is in private hands, land is in private hands, businesses are in private hands.
South Africa's story is a story of memory. The land remembers everything. The footsteps of miners walking barefoot to shafts that swallowed them. The cries of women watching sons disappear behind factory gates. The whispers of exiles who crossed the Limpopo River dreaming of freedom. Every hill, every street, carries the echo of a struggle that never truly ended. For centuries, control of this land meant control of identity. And in that control lies the seed of today's fear. When the British and the Dutch fought over this land in the 19th century, it was not only about territory, it was about who would define belonging. They drew lines across maps, divided tribes, and forced migrant labor systems that pulled men from across southern Africa into South Africa's mines and farms. From the early 1900s, thousands of Mozambicans, Basotho, and Malawians were recruited under colonial contracts to dig gold and coal. These men built the wealth of the Union of South Africa, but they were never invited to share it. They lived in compounds, slept on cold floors, and sent meager wages back home. Their lives were the first version of foreign labor in South Africa, tolerated, but never accepted. When apartheid hardened in 1948, the system formalized exclusion, both for black South Africans and for foreign Africans. Pass laws controlled movement, racial segregation, enforced hierarchy, and the economy relied on migrant exploitation. Yet even under apartheid, solidarity sometimes crossed borders. The liberation struggle was not a South African struggle alone, it was continental. Tanzania, Zambia, Angola, Mozambique, Nigeria, and Zimbabwe opened their borders to South African freedom fighters, giving them weapons, shelter, and a voice when their own country silenced them. The dream of Pan-Africanism burned brightly then, a belief that Africa was one body, one people, one destiny. But when apartheid fell, the dream began to fade. The African National Congress inherited not a paradise, but a broken nation. Massive unemployment, inequality, and distrust. The transition was political, not economic. The white elite retained their wealth, and the new black government was forced to balance reconciliation with survival. The gap between rich and poor widened, and resentment grew quietly like a wound under the skin. By the early 2000s, as South Africa became the most developed economy in sub-Saharan Africa, it also became the most unequal. In the townships, the people who had once fought side by side for freedom began to ask, freedom for whom? At the same time, the fall of neighboring economies sent a wave of migration southward. Zimbabwe's 2008 crisis, hyperinflation, hunger, political violence, pushed millions across the border. Congolese, Somali, and Ethiopian refugees followed, escaping wars that destroyed entire generations. South Africa, stable and industrialized, became the light in the darkness. But every light attracts shadows. With every new arrival, the pressure in poor communities grew heavier. Jobs were scarce, houses overcrowded, and promises unfulfilled. A new question began to rise from the dust. Who owns this place? The phrase, "they are taking our jobs," began to echo through informal settlements. It was the same argument once used by white nationalists against black workers, now reborn among the oppressed themselves. When the apartheid government justified segregation, It said it was protecting our people from being displaced. When xenophobic mobs shout today, they use the same words. History repeats. Only the actors change. In 2008, the first great wave of xenophobic violence erupted. Over 60 people were killed, thousands injured, and tens of thousands displaced. In the settlements around Johannesburg and Durban, neighbors turned on neighbors. Some attackers said they were reclaiming South Africa for South Africans. Others acted out of desperation, jealousy, or manipulation. The government called it criminality.
Parliament can do with or without you. People are going to occupy land.
Never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing.
For many South Africans, the dream of liberation has turned into a daily contest for survival. Every day, another graduate lines up for a job that does not exist. Another mother chooses between electricity and food. The promises that once lifted hearts have become phrases printed on fading posters. Hope, for many, is a luxury. And in such a climate, even the smallest difference, an accent, a passport, a surname, becomes a fault line. In the informal settlements where tin roofs shimmer under the harsh sun, people live shoulder to shoulder, often unaware of where one story ends and another begins. Here, there are no borders, only fences built from fear. Yet every evening, the same fires burn for cooking. The same songs rise over the smoke. When a child cries, nobody asks where their parents were born. Suffering unites where politics divides. But not everyone sees this. In political halls and television studios, the rhetoric of separation still grows louder. Some leaders whisper of foreign infiltration, while others shout of economic sabotage. They do not see that division is a convenient disguise for failure. The elite needs an enemy to distract from stolen budgets and collapsing infrastructure, and the foreigner has become the perfect scapegoat, visible enough to blame, voiceless enough to ignore. The irony cuts deep. South Africa, the nation that once taught the world the meaning of reconciliation, now struggles to reconcile with itself. The monuments to freedom still stand, the Union Buildings, Constitution Hill, Robben Island, yet the spirit that built them flickers weakly. Young people wander through these places on school trips, listening to guides talk about struggle heroes, but for many, those stories feel like myths from another age. They do not see Mandela's long walk to freedom. They see a road filled with potholes. And yet, there is a generation refusing to accept the script written for them. They are poets in Soweto, vloggers in Cape Town, students in Durban. They speak of a borderless Africa, of solidarity instead of suspicion. They say the word foreigner as if it were an insult from the past. Their songs blend isiZulu, Shona, Lingala, English, and Xhosa into one new rhythm that the old divisions cannot name. They have no memory of apartheid's walls, but they feel its shadows and choose to step beyond them. Still, the path to healing is long. True reconciliation requires more than slogans. It demands courage, the courage to look inward. South Africa must ask itself why, after 3 decades of freedom, so many of its children still go hungry. It must admit that corruption, greed, and inequality have done more to destroy the dream than any migrant could. It must remember that its destiny is tied to the fate of the continent that carried it through the storm. If history has a lesson, it is that walls never last. Every empire that built them eventually watched them crumble, from Berlin to Bethlehem, from Soweto's mine dumps to Beitbridge's wire fence. What endures is not the border, but the bond between people who refuse to forget their shared humanity. The world is watching South Africa again, wondering whether it will repeat its past or rise beyond it. In the silence after the riots, when smoke still lingers and the streets are littered with broken glass, something quieter begins to happen. A South African woman opens her door to a displaced family from Zimbabwe. A Nigerian mechanic fixes a policeman's car without asking for payment. A Mozambican nurse stays through the night with a local patient. These are the small, invisible acts that never reach the headlines but keep the heart of the nation alive. Perhaps one day, history will tell a different story, not of violence, but of awakening. It will say that South Africa, scarred by centuries of division, finally understood that ownership is not possession. To own a land is to care for it, to feed it with compassion, to let others breathe in it without fear. It will say that when the people stopped asking who belongs, they finally became whole. The dream is not dead. It sleeps, waiting for those brave enough to wake it. And when that day comes, when Africans stand shoulder to shoulder, not as locals or foreigners, but as kin, the ghosts of apartheid will finally rest. The mines will hum with honest labor, the cities will glow without resentment, and the borders will be remembered only as scars that healed. Because South Africa was never meant to be a fortress. It was meant to be a bridge between past and future, between North and South, between despair and hope. And across that bridge will walk a new generation, carrying no flags but their humanity, answering the question once and for all. No one owns South Africa. It owns us all.